What is going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. Let's talk about the Primordial Stones. So, I've tried basically most of them out now on my Paladin. I've gotten about as many as I can, the really important DPS ones in particular. We're not even going to really touch on the tanking or healing ones today because those are fine, but they're not really relevant to what we want to, we want to know essentially, is this ring that we've got now going to be like a DPS upgrade compared to getting a ring with secondary stats. So let me just talk about the Primordial Stones and what's happened with them. So when they first got released, they're actually pretty undertuned, and Blizzard recently in the last couple days brought forth a big buff to most of the stones, a nerf to the arcane one down here. This is the one that shoots like magic missiles kind of thing. This got a 20-second ICD now. It used to have, I think, like no ICD at all. Internal cooldown. So I think this is kind of like almost just into the ground now. Like it's almost not even playable. But the most of them got buffs. Searing Smoky, 34%. Rolling Magma, 12. Echoing Thunder, 12. Flame Lick, 12. Storm Infuse, 34 on Storm Infuse, which just kind of blew my mind because this is the highest performing stone so far by a mile. 18.5 on the Desirous Blood, probably the second highest performing stone so far. Pestilent Plague by 72. This made sense to me because it's doing literally 0 damage. This plague one. And then there's like the healing ones, yada yada yada, right? Not worried about those today. So the question is like, are these good? Which combo's good? What do we do with this, right? Given that these buffs have happened now. So I've done a few dungeons with the buffed versions. Let me just say, like, I don't have any like an absolute definitive answer on all of the stones, but let me just say kind of right out of the gate here, I think the best combination is still the one that has kind of been discovered by everybody, which is the Prophetic Twilight Stone with the Storm Infused Stone and the Bloodstone. So the reason this is the best combo is because the Prophetic Stone says your damaging effects from your stones trigger your healing effects. So the damaging stone that we have is our storm one. The healing one that we have is our blood one. But guess what? The blood one also does damage in order to heal. It still counts as a healing stone, but it has to like deal damage to heal. So what this Prophetic Twilight Stone essentially says is, hey, when this thing procs, this lightning one, it's going to trigger this bloodstone. And then when this bloodstone procs, it's going to trigger this lightning stone. So they're going to bounce off of each other and you're going to get double the procs. So instead of having 3 separate gems all proccing different effects, you're going to have 2 gems proccing twice. So you're going to kind of get 4 procs as opposed to 3. Now, that's good because these 2 gems are actually like the highest performing gems right now, as far as I can tell, in some of the dungeons that I've been running. So look at the Storm Infused dungeon in this one. This was an Algathar Academy 16 that I did. Basically, 6% of my damage was this Storm Infused one, and then the Blood one was 3.2, so ends up being 9.1% of my damage was just these gems. So again, there's no third gem proc, because, of course, it's the Prophetic guy just making these other 2 proc back-to-back. So that's that setup right there. 9.1, my 9.2% of my damage is just these 2 stones. Very good. That's very good, in my opinion. Getting a ring like this that's going to add like 9 to 10% more damage is pretty insane. And I don't even have these suckers upgraded yet. I do have the Storm one upgraded, but I do not have the Blood one upgraded yet. So I don't even know if upgrading the Twilight one will make it proc more often. Probably not. But the point is, I don't even have the Blood one upgraded, and it's still pretty good. I think this is the best combo right now for like most specs. If you want to know what kind of the BIS one is for every single spec, I don't really know. I don't really know that yet because I haven't been able to do all the testing on it yet. But as far as like the most generic, probably best one to do is the Blood and the Storm and the Prophetic. Now, what about the rest of them? Well, I tried different combinations, and let me tell you, they're not very good. This isn't a very good dungeon example here. Actually, it's pretty bad, but look at this one here. The Storm one still performed really well in this dungeon, but then we had the Pestilent. So I went Storm plus Pestilent plus this electrical charge one. It's called the Echoing Thunderstone. When you move around, you build electrical energy, causing you to your next damaging ability to also deal 20k damage. It did nothing. Like, it basically did nothing. And it was really hard to get it to ramp up. The ramp up time on this sucker took so long. So, like, I was moving and moving and moving and moving, and it still took like 25 to 30 seconds before this thing procced. I tried standing in front of a dummy and just moving as much as I possibly could, obnoxiously moving like crazy, and it's just not very good. So basically with this one, if they cut the proc rate in half, like the time it takes to build up charges, if they cut that in half, it would still probably not be that good, in my opinion. So it's unfortunate, because I think that with something like the Thunderstone, they really missed an opportunity here. Imagine for a second if this one, instead of just saying moving builds energy and then you discharge into damage, it said, imagine if it said that part, and then it had an additional part underneath that said, if you use a movement increasing ability, like Blessing of Freedom, or Power Word Shield, or Feathers from a Priest, or Monk, Tiger Lust, if you use any movement increasing ability, you immediately gain 50 stacks of the Thunderstone. That would be really cool, and it would incentivize you to use your movement increasing abilities, like Blessing of Freedom. You actually have to take Unbound Freedom to get the movement speed increase, but do you see what I'm saying? How cool that would be? How interesting that would actually now become? Because it builds up stacks to 100. It goes from 0 to 100. And if you use a movement increasing ability, you immediately get 50 stacks. That would be so cool, and that would actually make this potentially playable, because right now I think the damage on it is sort of abysmal. This Knockhood, I think I went back to the other two, yeah. So, I have a bunch of other dungeons that I did, but I did them on my laptop, and the details damage meter isn't here. But it's okay, because I remember kind of what happened. So, ultimately, even with the 72% buff on this Pestilent one, I still don't think it's good enough to run. I need to try one more, like, big dungeon with it and really give it a good shake. But I don't think it's good enough. I tried running a few dungeons with this Necromantic one, which was very interesting, actually. Here's what it says. Once every minute, moving near a corpse grants the equip effects of the Blood one, the Cold Frost, and the Pestilent Plague. So, Pestilent Plague is up here. The Cold Frost one, I don't actually have a Cold Frost one on me, but it does a bunch of basically single target frost damage. It's actually maybe the 4th best stone that you could get besides the 3 that I have equipped. But this Necromantic one gives you the Frost effect, it gives you the Blood effect over here, and then it gives you the Pestilent effect for 25 seconds. So what that means is, if you move near a corpse, you get a buff for 25 seconds, and that gives you a chance to proc the Pestilent and the Cold and the Blood. A chance. And if you have one of those stones equipped already, it goes up by 75%. So I would get the Blood effect. It would get bonus. Now, I tried this in a dungeon. It equated to like 4 of these buffs giving me 1% of my damage overall. So 4% more damage. So it wasn't really worth it. Like, this stone accounted for maybe up to 4% of my damage. So just not very good. And it has this whole corpse requirement, which is kind of weird, because sometimes we'd be killing a pack and all the mobs would die like evenly, and then they would like all die together, and then this thing would go off because a corpse there's a corpse near me now, but there's no more mobs to kill except for the Spitefuls. So like, it was completely wasted a few times, which was kind of annoying. This one was really interesting. The Searing Smoky, successfully interrupting exhale smoke, dealing fire damage in a cone in front of you. I tried this in a dungeon. Again, I just wasn't kicking enough, to be honest. And like, you have to nail your kicks. And there's all kinds of fights that don't have a kick at all. They just don't have a kick. Particularly boss fights where there's literally nothing to kick. And it's like, this is completely wasted on a boss fight. 100% useless on a boss fight. So, it's not very good. What I want to try with this actually is going Prop Paladin, and with all the Avenger shields that are flying out, I wonder if you could get this sucker to proc all the time, and it might actually be worth it on Prop Paladin. I think on DPS characters, it's kind of wasted, in particular on boss fights. Okay? Yeah, this Thunder one's really bad. Pestilent's kind of bad. This one is just not good enough. This one is really situational. Didn't seem to work very well. I didn't try the Arcane Stone because I'm not playing like a caster that does sort of magic damage all the time. So this, again, this is the one that just got severely nerfed. it has an internal ICD now of 20 seconds. So I think it's probably just going to go on the shelf. Like, you can just put it away, to be honest. This Fel one, you would have to combine it with the other Fire one, which I have tried. But the Fire one, I actually haven't retried. It only ever did about 2% of my damage. The one that does a fire damage over time, Dot, the flame licking one. So I tried this one. It only ever really did, even with the buff, it was only doing like 2 to 2.5% of my damage. So again, not really keeping up with the Storm Surge one that I've got in my gear right now. Or the Blood one, not keeping up with either of those. And finally we have this, the Obscure Pastel Stone. This was an interesting idea, and I tried this in a dungeon. But more often than not, it would just proc the shield effects or the healing effect. I got this effect a lot. The Wild Spirit Stone, where like I would just, because it just has a chance to give you a random effect, right? I would get this all the time, and it would just be wasted because I didn't need the healing. Even when I didn't need, like I wasn't injured, this thing I think would still proc. So that felt like really bad design to me, where it's like, this shouldn't be able to proc if I'm not injured, right? But it would give me all kinds of shields. A couple times it proc the physical damage thing from the Obsidian. Because it would like proc a shield for me. And then it would proc the physical damage because I have a shield from the Primordial Stone. So kind of interesting. But ultimately it's really random. And there's really no deterministic way of getting kind of the damage buffs that you're kind of hoping for. So I think ultimately right now the best combination is going to be this. Where, again, you have the Twilight Stone proccing the Storm and the Blood together. The only thing I will say is potentially the Fire one. I need to retest the Fire one again and see if it's a little bit better than it was before. But I do think, I do think the Pestilent one is really bad. The only other one I would want to test is the Cold one, which, where is it here? Freezing Ice Stone. Dealing damage has a chance to chill the target, dealing 20,000 frost damage and slowing them. This one felt really good on single target fights. I don't know what it is about. This thing seemed to proc a lot on single target fights. So maybe on like a Tyrannical week, this is the only other one that I would think about considering. So you basically want Storm. If you're thinking about which items, which stones you want to upgrade right now, 100% you should do Stone and Blood, and then possibly the Freezing Ice Stone. That would be the third one I think you should probably upgrade. Or the Flame Licked one. But I think that in my testing, the Flame Licked one never did as much damage as the Freezing Ice one did. So it's up to you. But those are the ones I would upgrade. And then you're going to have the Support Gem alongside them, with which is going to trigger them, the Twilight Stone. I still think you either go Storm and Blood and Twilight, or Storm and Blood and Frost Stone. I think that's the best combinations to do right now in all my testing that I've kind of done. Okay? That's it for the stones, guys. That's my initial testing on the stones, what I think about them all. It's unfortunate that a lot of them are kind of just lame and don't have additional effects. Like I said, if this Thunder one got extra charges by you pressing a movement speed ability, that would be really unique and cool. I wish this Nature one had a way to like refresh the dots that were spreading around. Like, imagine if this stone said what it said right now, but also said, if you deal nature damage other than the Pestilent Plague, while the Pestilent Plague debuff is on an enemy, you will refresh the plague. So, like, imagine you're a rogue with your poisons that do nature damage. This Pestilent Plague finally procs on a mob, and then you start hitting them with your poisons as like an assassination rogue, let's say. You do a bunch of poisons, a poison bomb goes off, and you're dealing nature damage. That nature damage will guarantee refresh the Pestilent Plague Stone, and then let it spread even further. That would be a really cool idea. It would incentivize players who can deal nature damage to pick up this stone and use it. Like, shamans deal nature damage with all their lightning stuff, right? Boomkins deal nature damage. I think evokers can deal nature damage. There's a lot, rogues can deal nature damage. So I really wish that Blizzard had given all of these stones additional effects that coincided with the magic school that they are a part of. So this one would focus on nature damage, and any specs in the game that can deal nature damage would gain that additional nature effect that's going on. You could do the same thing with this one. Again, the movement speed stuff would be really, really cool. The Flame Licked one, imagine if there's lots of classes that deal fire damage. Rep Paladin, Fire Mage, There's other ones I can't think of them, of course, off the top of my head. I should never do this off the top of my head, but there's multiple classes that deal lots of fire damage. Survival Hunter deals fire damage. There, boom, nailed it. So you could have an additional effect with the fire one where, again, it either refreshes the dot that's going on, or you could say any enemy that has a flame-licked dot on them takes 10% fire damage from like all sources. So then all your other fire damage, like an enhancement shaman with lava lash, fire nova, you know, all other fire damage going on is 10% stronger against a target that has this flame-licked dot on them. Like, imagine if you had really interesting effects going on that coincided and made it so that certain specs in the game wanted to chase these particular stones and upgrade them all the way because you would benefit from the additional effect. I think that would have been a much cooler way to go about doing these stones rather than just like, hey, you deal fire damage, hey, you deal lightning damage, whatever. So anyway, that's my little rant about how they should have upgraded these stones, and they're never going to, but whatever, it doesn't really matter. But these are, I think, the best stones you want to pick up. The blood one, the lightning one, the prophetic twilight one if you want to do that setup, or the frost one. I think that's the next one, best line. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Oh, my game just crashed. What just happened? Oh, well. Oh, there we go. We're back. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What has been your experience with the primordial stones so far? Have you upgraded them all the way? Let me know in those comments down below. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much again for watching. Love you all. I'll see you in the next one.